Good morning. We arise today in the name of silence, womb of the word, in the name of stillness, home of belonging, in the name of solitude, of the soul and the earth. We arise today, blessed by all things, wings of breath, delight of eyes, wonder of whisper, intimacy of touch, eternity of soul, urgency of thought, miracle of health, embrace of God. May we live this day compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, generous in love. I will light the chalice this morning. And let us say together our call to worship. Come, let us gather. We gather to celebrate the sacred within and among us. We come to seek spiritual growth and understanding. We strive to practice acceptance, forgiveness, and love. Together, we work to build a world with justice and compassion. Come, together. Let us gather together. Namaste. I would like to teach you a song this morning. Many of you, I know, practice yoga, and so you probably have a translation of Namaste, but there are lots of those. I go with the one that is about light. The light in me sees the light in you. Namaste. So I'm going to teach you this song. We'll just sing it through a couple of times. And then we will do the greeting as we normally do it. But I will ask you to make sure that you greet someone this morning whose name you do not know, and introduce yourself. So you'll simply say, Namaste, I'm, etc. And really look into that person's eyes so that you are really seeing the light, because I think it's easy for us to be embarrassed that we don't know each other's names, and then we miss that moment of seeing the light. So I'll just sing through the melody of this song, which has 4 parts, but we will just do maybe 2. And it goes like this. Just listen one time. Namaste, 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 namaste. And if you'd like to just hold your hands in the namaste position. So my turn and then your turn. Namaste, 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 namaste. Namaste, namaste. And let's just take the whole thing from the beginning. Namaste, namaste, namaste. Namaste.
morning. We are small and mighty today. Welcome to First Parish, Milton. My name is Leslie McPherson-Artinian, and I'm a member of the worship committee. First Parish is a vibrant, welcoming congregation that welcomes all people to grow in deep faith and take bold action. We are so glad you are here with us today. This sanctuary is made holy by your presence. If you're joining us for the first time, please take a welcome packet from our pew rack. There's information about our services and childcare. If you fill out the yellow card inside and drop it in the offering plate, you'll receive our weekly email newsletter, which will help you get to know us better. My fellow worship assistant, lack of a greeter, Jenny and I do not have colorful name tags, but we will still be happy to walk you to coffee hour after worship is over. Please join us and we can answer your questions. We strive to make our worship experience accessible to people of all ages and abilities. Please see the welcome card in your pew for more information about this, or speak to us or an usher when we have ushers. The work of living our faith is done both in and out of worship, so I draw your attention to the printed announcements that came with your order of worship. Though I don't know, are there any today? Are there any? Okay, we're just winging it today, folks. Extending a generous welcome is the spiritual practice, and I invite us now to all welcome each other warmly. Take a few minutes and say namaste.
No, that came first. Sorry. So we're just going to go right into the reading. Okay. In the beginning, God created each tree so that it could yield many different kinds of fruit. Then Cain killed his brother, Abel, and the trees went into mourning. From then on, each tree would yield just one kind of fruit. Only in the world to come will the trees return to their full fruitfulness.
A very long time ago, when the world was new, many different kinds of fruit grew on each and every tree. Or apples, plumelons, and bonangerines ripened on a single branch. The smell of penango, limeberry, and waterlope sweetened the air. 2 children walked in God's garden called Earth. One was named Cain, the other Abel. These were the first children, the first brothers.
Cain and Abel loved the taste of or apples, plumelons, and bonangerines. They loved the smell of penango, limeberry, and waterlope. The earth was warm and soft, and fruit trees grew in abundance. Each brother had a special job. Cain was the farmer. He loved to dig in the earth and harvest the vegetables and fruit. He knew how to take the wheat of the field, grind it into flour, and bake bread.
Abel was the shepherd. He liked to watch as his sheep grazed in the fields, and he gently guided the strays back to the flock. He would shear their wool and spin it into soft yarn to make blankets.
Cain's hair was straight and coarse like straw from the grain he planted. Abel's hair was soft and curly like the wool on the sheep he tended. Cain noticed that when he was alongside his brother, Abel reached only to his chin. Abel saw how large Cain's hands were compared to his own.
But when they stood face to face, they saw that their eyes were the same color of chestnut. Every spring, Cain and Abel marveled at the birth of lambs and the ripening of wheat.
In the cool of the evening, Cain wrapped himself in Abel's wool, and Abel dined on Cain's vegetable stew. Late at night, wrapped in soft blankets and feasting on sweet plum melons, the brothers told each other their dreams.
One day, Cain and Abel argued about whether it was best to be a farmer or a shepherd. Cain insisted that God loved the farmer best.
After all, God planted the first garden.
Abel argued that God loved the shepherd best. After all, God created the animals and watches over them, he insisted.
Cain and Abel prayed to God. When Cain prayed, he brought with him a large basket of ripened vegetables. When Abel prayed, he brought his very finest sheep.
Cain looked at his silent vegetables shriveling up in the noon sun, while Abel's sheep bleated happily in the field. Cain was certain that God must like sheep better than vegetables. Maybe God did like the shepherd better than the farmer.
Cain glared at his brother. That night, he didn't cover himself with Abel's blanket, and he didn't tell Abel his dreams. The next day, he didn't share his vegetable stew with Abel. Abel did not understand why Cain was so angry at him.
At night, Cain thought about how everything seemed so easy for Abel. If it weren't for his brother, he would be the favorite one. If it weren't for Abel, he'd be happy. Just thinking about it made Cain's face turn red like the beets he grew. "I hate you, Abel," he called out.
Hearing Cain's words, Abel turned pale like sheep's wool. "I hate you too, Cain," Abel shouted. From then on, whenever Cain and Abel met in the field, they turned their faces away from each other. For weeks, they could not look at each other in the eye.
One hot morning, Cain was clearing some heavy rocks from the ground. A sheep from Abel's flock trampled on Cain's newly planted field. Abel was lying in the shade of a nearby tree while his sheep grazed lazily. Cain tried to speak to Abel, but the words would not come.
Cain hated that his brother was resting while the sheep made a mess of all his hard work. Cain was so angry that he felt as if he were on fire inside. His heart was beating so strongly that he covered his ears to make the pounding stop, but it just got louder. He couldn't even look at Abel anymore. He could only stare at the ground.
At that moment, Cain noticed a large rock sitting by his feet. Without thinking, he lifted the rock, and instead of tossing it aside as he always did, he threw it at Abel and hit him on the head.
Abel fell over and did not move. Cain called to him, but Abel did not answer. It was then that Cain knew he had killed his brother, Abel. Cain wanted to run away, but his feet would not carry him, and his hands trembled. The sky darkened.
Then Cain heard God's voice calling to him, Where is your brother?" God's voice was angry and sad. Cain answered, "Am I my brother's keeper?"
The rock that seemed so light a moment ago was heavy in Cain's heart. The gash in Abel's head appeared as a mark on Cain's own. Cain wished he could go back in time and take back his anger, take back the rock. He missed his brother. He felt ashamed. Abel would never grow up and have children. It was as if Cain had destroyed an entire world.
The earth that had always felt warm and soft beneath his feet turned cold and hard. Where once fruits and flowers bloomed, now only thorns and thistles grew. Cain couldn't farm anymore. He wandered from place to place, looking for a home.
Winter came early that year, and the trees wept leaves. All kinds of fruit fell before they ripened. Victorines, raspberry, and canterbury covered the ground. No longer could different kinds of fruit remain on a single tree.
Time passed, a long time. The world was not new anymore. People built cities and made homes there. Yet, people often spoke angry words. And with angry words, they drew their swords. Swords turned into guns, and guns to bombs. One killing became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 16, 16 killings became war. Entire worlds were destroyed.
Now no one remembers Victorines, raspberry, and canterbury. But the people keep telling the story of Cain and Abel, the first children. They sigh as they read of Cain picking up the rock. They want to hold back his hand and stop his anger from growing into hate. Perhaps one day, when each person learns to reach out an open hand without the rock, without the sword, without the gun, the entire world can be saved.
Then, many different kinds of fruit will once again grow on a single tree. The ore apples will return, the bonangerines will appear, and in God's garden called earth, all will be good.
What a goodly thing if the children of the world could dwell together in peace. What a goodly thing if the children of the world could dwell together in peace. What a goodly thing if the children of the world could dwell together in peace. What a goodly thing if the children of the world could dwell together in peace. What a goodly thing if the children of the world could dwell together in peace. Stand as you are willing and able. And let's sing this song through a couple of times and then try it in a round. Sounds like you might know it. So we'll sing it through 2 times in unison, and then we'll start over here and sing it 2 more times through in a round. What a goodly thing if the children of the world could dwell together in peace. What a goodly thing if the children of the world could dwell together in peace. What a goodly thing if the children of the world This is one of my favorite services of the year. Thank you for being here to share it. I know some of you feel the same way. And this is Parish's homily, so I just want to credit her with this. It's a nice ritual for me to experience, and hopefully for you as well. How good it is and how pleasant for people to dwell together. Wouldn't it be a beautiful thing? Wouldn't it be heaven on earth? Could it even be called the kingdom of God to be so full of harmony that even the different tastes and textures of fruits could become one? Or apples and plum melons, for heaven's sake, can you imagine? We do a lot of singing and card sending this time of year that extol the virtues of peace and goodwill, but they never really go that far, do they? It's hard to imagine, outside of storybook land, what it might be like to have our differences all come together. To really dwell in that good and pleasant place where all is bliss and we know war no more. It's sure a lot easier to imagine the extension of what's in our human hearts most of the time, to one degree or another, fear of not being enough. The certainty that someone else is getting a better deal. The need to prove ourselves worthy, loved, valuable. Because mostly we worry that we're not. Isn't that what so much of the trouble is always about? But you know, and I know, that there is enough love. There has always been enough goodness, such an abundance of goodness in this universe, that it has flowed from the source of all life and into each of us, and passes freely from one another if we let it. The world is saturated with it, with beauty, with grace, with inexplicable acts of kindness and hearts that explode with love against all reason. God planted it in us and gave us the power to choose it, to cultivate it, to grow it. But there's still this business of how to get along when our good ways aren't the same, and how to live with the grandness of the mystery of that goodness in the midst of all the doubts we have. Doubts of ourselves, doubts of our God, and doubts of each other. Now, Cain and Abel are said to be the first brothers. According to the biblical story, there are just the two of them and their parents, Adam and Eve. It can be hard to get along one-to-one in the same family, for sure. Those of us who have spent a little more time than usual with our kin this holiday can certainly vouch for that. These many millennia later, there are many family configurations and many possible families we can belong to. Even when it's not our birth family that is our closest web, we know the trials of trying to get along with folks who really know us well enough to get under our skin. We really are all connected, whether we're raised by the same parents or not. We're now a whole planet of brothers and sisters. All of us have trouble sharing. Many of us fight over who has enough and what enough is, and who started it, and what exactly it is that isn't fair. It happens in the back seats on car trips, and it happens between heads of state at the United Nations Security Council. The story of Cain and Abel tells us some important things. It tells us that when we feel jealousy, anger, insecurity, resentment, and rage. Jealousy, anger, insecurity, resentment, and rage. We are not the first people ever to feel it. We come from a long line of people who have suffered these feelings. It tells us how profoundly careful we need to be with our reactions when we have them. An argument around a campfire can end in a tragic death. Had there been more people around, someone Cain could have talked to about his anger with Abel, someone who could have lent him some perspective, someone who could have reminded him of the love he had for Abel that lived side by side with his jealousy. Things could have turned out a whole lot differently. We owe that to each other in community, keeping each other's feet on the ground when we might be tempted to go off in a rage, offering help with hurting hearts before they are consumed with vengeance. The world is not the same after Abel is killed. The earth turns cold and hard. Where the flowers had been, only thorns and thistles grew. And when autumn came, the trees wept leaves. So it is every time we harbor hard feelings, when we let our reaction to another person diminish who we are and forget the gift and blessing that belongs to each of us as children of a loving creation. We forget the namaste. If we are ever to get back to that mythical land where many kinds of fruit can grow from the same tree, where all beings are at peace and everyone has enough, we need to keep our hearts cleared of the hard feelings and resentment that can build up and turn to rage. We need to do it among us here at First Parish. And we need to learn ways to do it as nations, as religions, as people of different ethnic groups. Our connection is deeper than our anger, deeper than our rage. But our anger has the power to destroy not just those we fear, those we dislike, but also ourselves. If we let ourselves return to that place deep inside of us, the place where goodness is planted and flourishes, the place where we are most in touch with the holy, the place where our hopes and our deepest capacity for love burn like constant embers. If we let ourselves return to that place, perhaps we can begin the new year rightly, ready to let go of those hurts that limit our love and keep us locked into a space where hearts are hard and our field of vision is limited.